Good morning, everybody. Heather the Bard here this week with my mandolin to talk about the four main types of tunes that you will encounter in Irish music. So first of all, a little bit of history. Irish music is largely an oral tradition, meaning if I were learning Irish music, I would seek out a teacher to teach me the tunes by ear or by rote, where that is, I show you how to play and then you copy what I'm doing. Or I would learn from other musicians that I play with at the local session or by listening in modern times on YouTube. And that's how it would be passed down and learned from generation to generation, is through hearing it and recreating what we've heard. So if you come from a classical music background, you're probably familiar with music notation. And in classical music, music notation is like, that's what you follow, that is what music is, that is how it's set up. In traditional music, it's just a guideline. So what I have some sheets here of some notations of different tunes to kind of illustrate the differences. And what it is that this is how one person heard it and thought that it needed to be written down like. It is far from being set in stone. It is not concrete. And that's part of the beauty of Irish music, is that it's kind of flexible in a way, in that it leaves room for musical interpretation of the individual player. But jigs, and the other thing, Irish music comes from a very strong dance tradition, and so all the names of these four basic tunes are, at least, well, three of them, are related to the types of dances, and the name indicates the type of steps that you would use for the dances. So the first type is called a jig, and I have a copy here of a traditional jig called Out in the Ocean. And you'll see it's got this little set of numbers. If you're not familiar with how music is notated, the top number indicates how many beats there are per measure, which is the distance from one bar line to the next bar line. And the bottom number indicates which note gets the beat. In this case, the eighth note gets the beat. Now, since there's 6 of them, that usually means that they are grouped together in groups of 3. So you have 3 eighth notes, 3 eighth notes, 3 eighth notes. That's called a triplet. Most jigs are going to be written or notated in this 6/8, so there's 2 sets of 3 per measure. There are different types of jigs. There's a double jig where you have 4 sets of 3. There's a slip jig where you have 3 sets of 3. And each of those types of jigs are different dances. So that's kind of a little fun bit of trivia. But most jigs are you're gonna find them in 6/8. And this kind of creates, having those eighth notes grouped in groups of 3 is going to create a rolling feel to it. So if I will just play. That's the first part to Out in the Ocean. It's got that nice do 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 type of feel to it. So the next type of tune or dance, as the case may be, is called a reel. And again, this is a great example of why this is just a guideline, because you'll see here these reels are notated in what's called cut time, which means it's played at twice the speed of regular 4/4 or common time. And I've seen reels notated like this. I've seen them notated in common time, and it's just understood that they're supposed to be played fast. I've also seen them notated in 4/4, where instead of writing eighth notes, they've notated them all as 16ths. Again, one person's interpretation of how a tune should look on the page. But reels are very straight. The eighth notes are grouped in groups of 4 or 2 1/4 note, but they're very straight in comparison to a jig. So I'm going to play the first part of Temperance Reel here for you to kind of hear the difference. See how different that sounds from they're very different dances. So the next type of tune is called a hornpipe. Hornpipes have links to the seafaring tradition, so this is like a sailor's dance. But they are largely notated in 4/4 with a dotted rhythm, which means that one note is longer than the note that follows it. So we have this da 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 da. They're also played a bit slower than reels generally. This one's called the Japanese hornpipe. All these tunes are traditional ones. You can find them online. They're public domain. And this is how a hornpipe rhythm should sound. So a bit slower, but still kind of sprightly. Hornpipes are also very common for adding triplets at the end of phrases rather than continuing the dotted rhythm. And the last type of tune, I picked out a selection of O'Carolan. He was a blind Irish harpist in the middle of the 1700s. And this is a very famous tune that he wrote. He would travel the length and breadth of Ireland writing tunes and then naming them after the people that he wrote them for. And this one is called Eleanor Plunkett. And this is a beautiful slow air. Slow airs, they can be written in all kinds of different time signatures. 3/4, 4/4. I've seen it all over the map. But the key is in the type. They're called slow airs because they're supposed to be slow, calming, sometimes sad, sometimes nostalgic. Just this wonderful mix of contemplative emotions going on in a slow air. So there you have it. There's the 4 basic types of tunes that you will encounter when you begin learning Irish music. And that's all I've got for you today. If you enjoy the fact that I'm teaching lessons every week for free, please consider supporting this project for me via Patreon. Patreon.com/HeatherTheBard, so that I can continue teaching these lessons and spreading the love and joy of Irish music. It takes a bit of time out of my day and to prepare materials and everything every week, and it helps me out. Every little bit helps me out. So please consider supporting via Patreon. You could also find me and upvote on Steemit, which is steemit.com/@HeatherTheBard. All the links are below. And other than that, if you have questions, comments, drop them in the comments below. Hit me up on Patreon or on Steemit. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Happy playing.